This video was brought to you by Nebula. In a previous video, I talked about the first time I saw Shakespeare live on stage. It was a weird, abridged production of The Tempest in the 4th grade. But the first time I properly saw a full Shakespeare play live, it was at Los Angeles' Shakespeare in the Park in 2019. A shipwrecked girl dragged a bag through the audience, seated in the grass before the stage, and she cried out, "What country, friends, is this?" And a rowdy crowd cried out, "Griffith Park!" And she responded, "And what shall I do in Griffith Park?" The girl was Viola, and the play was Twelfth Night. Look, it's fun to make jokes about Shakespeare.
If you don't mind a note, or. To be or, not to be.
Don't lose focus. To be or not to be, that is the question.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
His works have been referenced and re-referenced and are so buried in the cultural zeitgeist you may not even realize how many popular turns of phrase are just quotes from his plays.
You can also imagine maybe John Wayne's Macbeth going, "Well, is this a dagger I see before me?"
His plays are so well known they're still being memed on to this day.
The new McDonald's Macbeth! The only sandwich with meat taken from a cow that trusted the butcher with its very life. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba!
There's also this famous line.
Some are born great.
Some achieve greatness.
Others have greatness thrust upon them.
But we'll come back to that one later. But the opening of Twelfth Night is one such famous quote. "If music be the food of love, play on." In this instance, these are the words of a depressed duke to his court. Twelfth Night was probably written somewhere around 1601 to 1602. The first known performance on record of it is on February 2nd, 1602, when it was performed by the Lord Chamberlain's men. It wasn't published until 1623 in the first folio. From what I understand, the publication history of Shakespeare's stuff is quite complicated if you want to really get into it, but this is the generally accepted take. And Twelfth Night has been adapted into everything from a teen comedy to a Broadway musical set in Harlem to a Russian ballet. It's even a major plot point of the pseudo-biographical film Shakespeare in Love.
And her name will be Viola.
Also, I should state up front when discussing the plot of Twelfth Night and some of its historical context, I'm going to be using a lot of binary gendered language, an unavoidable side effect of discussing what was only written about and considered in binary terms at the time. Please bear with me, we'll talk more about gender in this play later. So, the opening of Twelfth Night is actually a matter for some discourse. Traditionally, as written, the first scene is our depressed, lovesick Duke lying around talking about how music may be the food of love, but the woman he loves, Olivia, has sworn off seeing anyone while she mourns her dead brother.
Oh, she that hath a heart of that fine frame.
To pay this debt of love but to a brother?
How will she love when the rich golden shaft hath killed the flock of all affections else that live in her?
It's not exactly an attention-grabbing moment, so many adaptations open with a girl staggering out of the sea having survived a shipwreck and crying out,
"What country, friend, is this?"
Some adaptations even open with the shipwreck itself as a prologue before the opening scene, and frankly, I'm a fan of all of this. Sorry to any Bard purists, but I do think Viola's scene is a much stronger opening and introduces us to one of our primary protagonists. Orsino is more of a secondary character. Sorry, my dude. You see, Viola isn't just shipwrecked in a strange land. Her brother was on the ship with her, and she believes he's dead.
My brother, he is in Elysium.
But a sailor who arrived on shore with her says he saw her brother tie himself to the mast to brave the storm, giving her some hope she may find her brother again in this life rather than the next. But as for what she will do in this strange land of Illyria, a woman alone with her fortunes in such uncertainty, at first, the sailor, who is from Illyria, tells her of the man who rules here.
A noble duke, in nature as in name.
What is his name?
Orsino.
And he tells her that Orsino seeks the Lady Olivia. He also tells her that Olivia recently lost her brother.
How did I serve that lady?
I might not be delivered to the world till I had made mine own occasion mellow what my estate is.
But the lady will not see anybody outside of her household, so Viola decides the best course of action is to be a page for the Duke. No bachelor's household would have need for a lady-in-waiting, and she needs some security through employment. So she decides to dress as a boy and call herself Cesario. One of my favorite adaptations, the Trevor Nunn film, even shows us the process of her becoming a man, as does the very loose adaptation of Twelfth Night that is sort of contained in Shakespeare in Love.
As I love you and as you love me, you will bind my breast and buy me a boy's wig.
Technically in the text, she says she'll be his eunuch, which is just sort of said and then never brought up again, and afterwards Orsino just speaks to her as one of his attendants or pages. And the next time we catch up with Viola, now going by Cesario, she's already Orsino's favorite.
Cesario, thou knowest no less than all.
I have unclasped the book even of my secret soul.
Other members of his household like Valentine agree.
If the Duke do continue these favors towards you, Cesario, you are like to be much advanced.
And Orsino asks Cesario to woo Olivia on his behalf.
Oh, then unfold to her the passion of my love.
Surprise her with discourse of my dear faith. It shall become thee well to act my woes.
Orsino thinks maybe Olivia will listen if the message comes in a form that is a little effeminate.
For they shall yet belie thy happy years that say thou art a man.
Diana's lip is not more smooth and rubious.
Thy small pipe is as a maiden's organ, shrill and sound.
And all is semblance of a woman's part.
Also 10 out of 10 for Anne Hathaway in the 2009 Twelfth Night production at the Public Theater, reacting like this to that little speech.
And all is semblative a woman's part.
I just think that's very funny. And Viola is already smitten with Orsino.
Yet a baleful strife, whoe'er I woo.
Myself would be his wife.
But before we can get into Olivia and her whole household, let's talk a little bit about Illyria and adapting Twelfth Night. So in my previous Shakespeare video, I talked a bit about how Much Ado About Nothing, when it is adapted, often sets the time around a recent war. Soldiers are coming from a war, so there's a lot of post-World War I or World War II or post-war Italy. It really runs the gamut. But often, there is a historical time and place, either an Elizabethan one or otherwise, and it's set near a war. Twelfth Night has nothing so concrete, although there are references to past soldiering for some characters, which some productions choose to draw on. The country the play takes place in, Illyria, is a strangely fluid setting. Illyria was an ancient region of the Balkan Peninsula. The area is now mainly a part of Albania. According to the Arden Shakespeare, the region was inhabited from the 10th century BC by the Illyrians, an Indo-European people who later became notorious for acts of piracy against Roman shipping. After a series of wars with Rome, it was defeated in 168 BC and established as the Roman province of Illyricum. Occupied by the Slavs from the 6th century, its name, Illyria, could still be used to refer to part of the Adriatic coast, roughly Dalmatia, at the time under the dominion of the Venetian Republic. It was thus historically a hybrid land, geographically Mediterranean, ethnically Slav, but politically Italian. The Arden goes on to state that none of this is particularly present in the comedy, beyond a few Italian names that might reference the then-contemporary connection to Venice. Hints at a Mediterranean culture are even more vague and basically a mishmash of recognizable cultural markers. Viola references her brother being in Elysium, the afterlife in Greek mythology, but she and her brother are from Messalene, which might be a reference to Massilia, which is modern-day Marseille in France, or it could be a reference to the play Menaichme by Plautus. Basically, everything in the play sounds quote-unquote exotic, but it's difficult to actually pin down, and the Arden suggests that the country it resembles most of all, through attitudes and various local references, is simply England. And an Elizabethan audience probably wouldn't have recognized Illyria anyway, so it's more of a mythical setting than a real one, and in adaptations that's led to a lot of creativity. One Stratford Festival production did this mid-century postmodern thing. The Yale Repertory Theatre went for an Afrofuturism vibe. One Globe production gave the whole thing a bizarre Americana twist, referencing every possible era at once, complete with a weird tacky plastic tiger at the back and piles of tires around the stage. There was a character dressed in like a 1930s baseball uniform and another dressed as Elvis for some reason. One deeply cursed production from the 90s, starring Paul Rudd and Helen Hunt, took the whole thing in a distinctly, Eastern direction? I can't explain why Paul Rudd looks like a depressed Orientalist Dracula, but boy did he. This was the weirdest, and for reasons beyond my understanding, wettest production of Twelfth Night I've ever seen. Then of course there's the musical adaptations. Due to the famous opening line, "If music be the food of love, play on," many productions have sought to infuse their Twelfth Nights with specific musical stylings. Now, many Shakespeare plays, the comedies in particular, include some music, but Twelfth Night has a lot of music in it at baseline. At least 3 or 4 scenes explicitly include some amount of song in them, so this direction makes a lot of sense. There have been just straight-up musical adaptations like the 2016 Public Theater adaptation by Shayna Taub, or the 1996 Broadway musical Play On, which was set in Harlem. Other productions for their musical sequences maintain a certain style, like the 2011 Stratford Festival production went pop rock, the 2017 Globe production went disco, complete with a rendition of the famous We Are Family by Sister Sledge, or the 1988 Kenneth Branagh Twelfth Night, which had music composed by Pat Doyle and Paul McCartney? Basically, music is a central motif in the play, the food for love according to Orsino, a useful skill Viola intends to use in Count Orsino's employ, and a means of currency for the fool, along with his wit.
Better a witty fool than a foolish wit.
Of course, some Twelfth Nights keep it simple and stick to a traditional Elizabethan setting and musical style. The 2012 Globe production even went so far as to perform it with an all-male cast as it would have been seen at the time, and I'm pretty sure the makeup and wigs are along the lines of what was traditionally seen on stage in the era. The production I saw at my local Shakespeare in the Park went for a 1920s or 30s swing jazz style, which was fun too. Basically, don't be surprised if you go to see Twelfth Night and people burst into song. The title Twelfth Night actually has very little to do with the play, although some believe the play was written to mark the holiday of Twelfth Night, aka the Feast of Epiphany, which was on January 5th or 6th and commemorated the visit of the 3 kings to Bethlehem to worship an infant Jesus. The title Twelfth Night was synonymous with carnival-esque revelry, according to the Arden Shakespeare. There were all sorts of traditions, including a feast of fools and the idea of society being made topsy-turvy. Yes, I think that one scene in Hunchback of Notre Dame was celebrating Twelfth Night, as it were. Basically, it was a night of unruly partying of all kinds, and this idea of social mores being overturned, up is down, and so on is, I think, reflected in the chaos we see brought on by the arrival of Viola as Cesario. But let's not forget the play's full title, Twelfth Night, or What You Will. And the second half, to quote the Folger Library, makes clear the rule of will and pleasure that makes up much of the play. The antics and indulgences of Sir Toby Belch are an obvious example of misrule and feasting. Sir Toby Belch and his cohort, Sir Andrew Aguecheek, 2 major players in Olivia's household, insist repeatedly on, as the editor of the Arden Shakespeare puts it, the right to party.
Does thou think because thou art virtuous?
There shall be no more cakes and ale!
much to the displeasure of those around them.
Do ye make an alehouse of my lady's house?
The maid Mariah goes along with most of their absurdities while trying not to get fired when the two men get out of line on her watch. Basically, across several scenes, these two men cavort, make dumb jokes, and party loudly at late hours. Sir Andrew is always the subject of much humor because he seems to just not understand half of what's being said to him as an insult.
You waste the treasure of your time with a foolish knight.
That's me, I warrant you.
One Sir Andrew!
Oh, I knew to die, for many do call me fool.
Also, many Sir Andrews are played as queer, if only because the idea of coming onto a woman seems completely alien to him.
I've left you, fair shrew.
And you too, sir?
Accost, Sir Andrew. Accost.
What's that?
My niece's chambermaid.
Oh, good Mistress Accost. I desire better acquaintance.
My name is Mary, sir.
Good Mistress Mary Accost.
Accost is front her, board her, woo her, assail her.
By my troth, I would not undertake her in this company.
Is that the meaning of Accost?
But Toby also told Sir Andrew that he should pursue Olivia, so Olivia rejecting any outside company while she mourns her brother is an annoyance to them. It seems that Sir Toby is mainly keeping Sir Andrew around for his own benefit since the man is wealthy, and he doesn't really believe his niece would choose Sir Andrew, but Sir Andrew never picks up on that, so he sticks around believing Olivia will love him if he just tries hard enough.
Thou hast need send for more money.
If I cannot recover your niece, I'm a foul way out.
Send for money, knight.
If thou hast her not in the end, call me cat.
Sir Andrew is a bit sad, honestly.
I was adored once too.
There's also Feste? Festy? I'm so sorry, Shakespeare nerds. I'm so sorry. I'm going to call him Fest. I hate Feste and Festy. I don't like how those sound. So there's also Fest, Olivia's jester and clown. In Olivia's first proper scene on stage after so much discussion about her, Fest has returned after a long absence to entertain the lady.
Take the fool away.
Good Madonna, give me leave to prove you a fool.
Can you do it?
Dexterously, good Madonna.
And they have a conversation about her dead brother.
Good Madonna, why mournst thou?
Good fool for my brother's death.
I think his soul is in hell. No, his soul is in heaven, fool.
The more fool the Madonna to mourn for your brother's soul being in heaven.
Take away the fool, gentlemen.
Fest is such an interesting character, one open to many interpretations. He can be a truth teller or an agent of chaos. In one production, he was almost the villain of the piece. I enjoy the productions that treat him almost like a narrator, the one slightly apart from the action around him, commenting on the foolishness of others and on some occasions participating in it.
I did impeticoat thy gratillity. Oh!
According to Folger Library's artistic associate Michelle Lynch, one character worth keeping an eye on is Fest the Fool. In every production of Twelfth Night, Fest's portrayal is significant and unique. Fest's role in the play extends beyond mere entertainment. He uses music to set the tone for pivotal scenes and reflect the experiences of the lovers. I think my favorite Fest is probably from the 2017 Globe production where the drag performer Le Gâteau Chocolat played the character as a portentous, almost omniscient character.
Have you come to save me?
I can save no one, lady, not even myself.
But my other favorite is probably Ben Kingsley's performance in the 1996 Trevor Nunn film, which is the best balance of omniscience that lives outside the narrative and some good funny bits. But after receiving Fest's witty thesis about her brother, Olivia asks Malvolio's opinion on the jest, and Malvolio puts the man down.
I marvel your ladyship takes delight in such a barren rascal.
I saw her put down the other day with an ordinary fool that has no more brain than a stone.
Look you now. He's out of his guard already.
Unless you laugh and minister occasion to him, he is gagged.
Olivia accuses Malvolio of being too in love with himself to enjoy others. But from here, Viola arrives to deliver Orsino's message and is apparently quite stubborn about it.
Yonder
Young fellow at the gate swears he will speak with you.
I told him he was sick. He takes on him to understand so much and therefore comes to speak with you.
I told him you were asleep. He seems to have a foreknowledge of that too, and therefore comes to speak with you.
What is to be said to him, lady?
And then Olivia asks what kind of man is he?
Why, of mankind.
Of what personage and years is he?
Not yet old enough for a man, nor young enough for a boy.
He's very well favoured and speaks very shrewishly.
One would think his mother's milk was scarce out of him.
So, Olivia agrees to see Orsino's page, but she puts on her veil so Viola can't see her face, leading to some pretty funny business where Viola really wants to make sure her prepared speech is being aimed at the correct woman.
Good, gentle one! Give me modest assurance, if you be the lady of the house, that I may proceed with my speech.
Are you a comedian? No. My profound heart, and yet...
By the very fangs of malice, I swear, I am not that I play.
I heard you were saucy at my gates.
And eventually, Viola convinces Olivia to hear the message alone. At first, she tries to tell Olivia of Orsino's love.
Most sweet lady. A comfortable doctrine, and much may be said of it. Where lies your text? In Orsino's bosom. In his bosom? In what chapter of his bosom?
To answer by the method, in the first of his heart. Oh, I've read it. It's heresy.
And so Olivia, accustomed to these sorts of overtures, remains unmoved.
If I did love you in my master's flame.
With such a suffering, such a deadly life in your denial, I would find no sense.
Then Olivia asks how Viola would love her if she were in Orsino's place.
Why, what would you?
Make me a willow cabin at your gate.
And call upon my soul within the house.
Write loyal cantons of contemned love and sing them loud, even in the dead of night.
Hallow your name to the reverberate hills.
And make the babbling gossip of the air.
Cry out, Olivia, oh, you should not rest between the elements of air and earth.
But you should pity me.
And by the end of this scene, Olivia is completely head over heels for her.
I thank you for your pains.
And she leaves a flustered Olivia behind to flail about.
What is your parentage?
Olivia sends Malvolio with a ring she says Viola gave to her and a message to come back tomorrow so they can discuss it further. Malvolio delivers the ring to a baffled Viola who doesn't know anything about it. Eventually, Malvolio throws it at her feet, and here's where the penny drops.
I left no ring with her. What means this lady?
Fortune forbid my outside have not charmed her.
She loves me.
I am the man.
Oh, time. Thou must untangle this knot, I.
It is too hard a knot for me to untie.
Everybody is, in a word, fucked. At the start of Act 2, we learn that Sebastian, Viola's brother, is in fact alive, and he also believes that his sister is dead.
Though it was said she much resembled me, was yet of many accounted beautiful.
She bore a mind that envy could not but call fair.
She's drowned already, sir, with salt water, though I seem to drown her remembrance again with more.
And he's with a sailor named Antonio, who seems to be extremely devoted to him.
If you will not murder me for my love,
let me be your servant.
Antonio says he has enemies in Orsino's court, which is where Sebastian is headed. And despite the danger, he follows Sebastian. After all of this, there's a scene where Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and Fest are once again making noise and partying at all hours of the night. The maid Mariah first tries to stop them.
What a caterwauling do you keep here?
And then joins them, which is when Malvolio shows up, threatens Mariah's job and livelihood.
If you prize my lady's favor at anything more than contempt,
you would not give means for this uncivil rule.
And is just generally kind of a stick in the mud. The only ones he has actual power over are Mariah and Fest seems to have enough freedom to come and go as he pleases, so Mariah's the one with the most at risk.
She shall know of it by this hand.
Only Olivia can decide what to do about Toby and Sir Andrew, really. But nonetheless, Malvolio makes a stink, Toby calls him a Puritan, and then Malvolio leaves. Also, in this scene, Malvolio says this line.
Have you no wit, manners, nor honesty, but to gabble like tinkers? this time of night?
This is referencing an older common slur against Romani and traveler folk, particularly the Keir, or Irish travelers, according to a Romani friend of mine. I talked at length in my Much Ado About Nothing video about anti-Semitism in Shakespeare plays and other forms of bigotry, but I can't really pass this scene without pointing this one out as well. Although the term is antiquated now, the word was used as part of various discriminations against Romani folks, such as the law passed by Edward VI in 1551 named Act for Tinkers and Peddlers, which labeled them as harmful vagrants and required them to carry licenses or risk imprisonment, or the Tinker experiments, which ran in Scotland, endorsed by the government and the church from 1940 to 1980, and involved the forced settlement of Scottish travellers, removing children from their families and forcing them into schools to, quote, knock the tinker out of them. Basically, what Malvolio invokes as a casual insult has a long and complex history. Shakespeare used the word several times across several plays, along with, I'm sure, other antiquated slurs for Romani people that I missed. And I couldn't really pass this scene without mentioning it, but once Malvolio leaves, an angry Maria hatches a plan to get revenge on him. She'll forge a love letter in Olivia's hand and leave it out for Malvolio to find.
My purpose is indeed a horse of that color.
And your horse will now make him an ass.
Ass, I doubt not.
The letter she leaves is full of instructions for Malvolio to follow, and the next day, Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, Maria, and a fourth character, Fabian, set about their plot. The letter is written and left where a preening Malvolio can find it.
She's been yonder in the sun, practicing behaviour to her own shadow this half hour.
And the rest of them hide in the bushes to watch the scene unfold as Malvolio speaks aloud to himself, imagining what it would be like if he were lord of the manor.
I frown the while, perchance wind up my watch, or play with my... some rich jewel.
Toby approaches, curtsies there to me.
Cousin Toby, my fortunes having cast me on your knees, give me this prerogative of speech.
What?
You must amend your drunkenness!
And then he finds the letter.
What employment have we here?
By my life, 'tis my lady's hand. These be her very C's, her U's, and her T's.
That's a dirty joke, by the way. Apparently, that word used to be spelled cut. But all a modern actor has to do is really emphasize her C's, her U's, and her T's. But the letter begins as a poem.
Jove knows I love, but who?
Lips do not move. No man must know.
There's a bunch of business in the reading of the letter that's really funny, especially productions that lean into the silliness of the three listeners and their hiding. Also, there's this bit.
I may command where I adore, but silence like a Lucrece knife with bloodless strokes my heart doth gore.
M-O-A-I doth sway my life.
A fustian riddle.
M-O-A-I. Moi. No.
I love when any Malvolio tries to say it like that, although shout out to one 1994 RSC production where the actor apparently pronounced it as meow. There's also this bit.
If this fall into thy hand, revolve.
And of course, who could forget the famous quote you have definitely heard before?
But be not afraid of greatness.
Some are born great.
Some achieve greatness.
Some have greatness thrust upon them.
This will be a dick joke later, but by the end, Malvolio has twisted this nonsense into a confession of love about him as Maria and the others hoped he would. The letter commands that he dress in cross-gartered yellow stockings and smile, and he proclaims,
I will be strange stout in yellow stockings and cross-gartered,
and runs off. And Toby, delighted at the success of their plot, says this to Maria.
Wilt thou set thy foot on my neck?
And damn, Toby, I really didn't need to know you were into that. But Maria explains that Olivia hates the color yellow and cross-gartering, and since she's moody over Cesario, she'll hate a cheerful servant. All of these are instructions to make him foolish, and so far, it's a pretty funny plot. But let's put a pin in that for a bit and discuss queerness in Renaissance England. So discussing queerness in Renaissance times is tricky, largely because the language was so imprecise. There were terms like Ganymede, Pathic, Canatus, Catamite, Bugger, Ingle, or Sodomite, with Bugger and Sodomite being the most commonly used. But these terms were also used indiscriminately to describe various acts that were considered sinful or debaucherous, which makes it difficult for historians to pinpoint exactly what is being discussed in many historical texts. And I'm mainly going to be drawing from Alan Bray's book Homosexuality in Renaissance England in this section. It's a fascinating read, I highly recommend it. The book mainly focuses on queer men because, in Bray's words, female homosexuality was rarely linked in popular thought with male homosexuality, if indeed it was recognized at all.
And they were roommates.
Oh my God, they were roommates.
But what I find fascinating, looking back, is trying to figure out what exactly the average person might have thought when they went to the theater to see Romeo and Juliet and watched two men kiss on stage. As many of you know, women were not allowed to act on stage, so women's parts were played by men or young boys. According to Lucas Garcia and the Writers' Theatre, it was as much an aspect of social pressure as it was legality that kept women from the stage. Female actors were associated with sexual incontinence, prostitution, lasciviousness, and indecency, though there is evidence that women acted in street performances and in other notorious venues. All commercial acting companies of the time were made up entirely of men, and it was illegal for women to act on stage professionally until 1661. Apparently, the first actress on record to play Viola may have been a Mrs. Davenport in a 1660s Duke Theatre production. But basically, the influence of Puritan beliefs limited what theater could be and do throughout this era. So I wonder what an audience thought watching the heroines of Shakespeare played by men or young boys kissing other men on stage. It was common knowledge, people knew what they were seeing. There's even lines in plays like Twelfth Night that might be a little bit of an in-joke for a knowing audience.
And yet, by the very fangs of malice, I swear I am not that I play.
There are some people who theorize that Shakespeare himself might have been bisexual. He had a wife by the name of Anne Hathaway. No, not that one. Yes, that was her name. He had kids with his wife and the whole bit, but he also wrote a lengthy series of sonnets dedicated to a fair youth, a young man who he frequently praises for his beauty and says things like, "All days are nights to see till I see thee, and nights bright days when dreams do show thee me." Over 2/3 of his sonnets are dedicated to this young man. But I'll be honest, I'm not super interested in whether or not Shakespeare was queer. That's something for historians to figure out. I'm just curious what audiences must have thought when they saw Twelfth Night and watched a man acting as a woman, pretending to be a man, kissing another man on stage. Like, I wonder how people in 1601 or 1602 would have parsed that. On the one hand, some say that having only men on stage allowed the gender hierarchy to remain unchallenged, but according to Bray, Elizabethan and Jacobean theater acquired a reputation for homosexuality. Edward Gilpin, I think satirist of the time, described a sodomite as someone who is at every play and every night sups with his Ingles. Michael Drayton's The Moon Calf denounced the theater as one of the haunts of the sodomite. Bray also says that much of his research about this era is severely limited by the fact that the average person was illiterate and unable to write about their own experiences. Much of the writing discussing this at the time was political or satirical treatises or court documents. And frequently the cases that were tried or written about involved those of the higher classes. There was generally less concern, and less being written about, what those of lower social standing did amongst themselves, especially since those affairs weren't going to produce illegitimate children. Bray's ultimate observation is that much of the queerness that may have existed in this era, although moralized about and feared and very much punishable by law and death, still existed and was mostly tacitly ignored as long as it didn't involve those of the more respectable upper classes. is. So let's talk a little bit about this.
I have all the daughters of my father's house, and all the brothers too.
Towards the end of Act 2, we have one of the best scenes in the show and one of the linchpin scenes for Viola and Orsino's relationship. Because earlier we heard how Orsino and Viola are already close, but it was mainly about how he perceives something effeminate about her and wants her to go proposition Olivia on his behalf. Here, he just sits with her as they wait for Fest to come play them some music. Again, he's sort of moody and hopes the music will lift his spirits, and while they wait, they talk about love. Orsino observes that Viola speaks like she has experience with love and asks who has currently drawn her eye. And Viola responds vaguely, but also very, very obviously.
What kind of womanist?
Of your complexion.
She's not worthy then.
What years of faith? About your years, my lord.
Orsino, depending on the production, is either very dense or being deliberately obtuse here, as he says she should find somebody younger. He then goes on to state how women are fickle in love.
Then let thy love be younger than thyself.
Or thy affection cannot hold the bent.
For women are as roses,
whose fair flower, being once displayed, doth fall that very hour.
And before Viola can fight him on this point, Fest arrives to play them a melancholy song about someone wanting to die due to unrequited love, and once he leaves, Orsino asks Viola to go to Olivia again on his behalf.
Get thee to yon same sovereign cruelty.
And Viola asks,
but if she cannot love you, sir,
I cannot so be answered!
Sooth, but you must!
And Viola asks, what if a woman loved him the way he loved Olivia, without the love returned? What would he say to this woman? And Orsino again says that a woman's affection is not as deep or strong as a man's.
Aye, but I know.
What dost thou know?
Too well what love women to men may owe.
And Viola tells him a story that is as much about her dead brother as it is about herself, combining the two of them into one person. She describes the sister she had who loved a man and it went unrequited.
She sat like Patience on a monument, smiling at grief.
Was not this love indeed?
And Orsino asks what happened to her sister.
Died thy sister of her love, my boy.
And Viola tells him,
I'm all the daughters of my father's house.
And all the brothers too.
And yet I know not.
And before they can progress any further, Viola redirects, asking if she should go to Olivia for him.
Aye. That's the theme.
And that is pretty much the biggest scene between the pair of them until the end of the show. A scene full of longing and miscommunication, and I love it so much when it's done right. As Catherine Belsey points out in her essay, 12th Night, A Modern Perspective, Viola's disguise is an effective one.
For they shall yet belie thy happy years that say thou art a man.
He may observe traits that he attributes to a younger man, but he completely believes the disguise and is still falling in love. Because I think, much like Shang from Mulan, Orsino is a deeply bisexual character, and any 12th Night adaptation worth its salt will understand that Orsino is attracted to Cesario and Viola. Moments like this one from the National Theatre 12th Night production,
That I am Viola.
Yes! Oh!
really take me out of it because I think Orsino just really loves Cesario. Even before he fully understands it or can admit to it, he feels deeply for her, even when she's a man.
I am the man!
There's something about the idea of loving someone so much that you love every version of them. Every iteration is somebody worth loving. I saw a quote like that once. I couldn't find an attribution for it, but it sounded nice, and it sounded like Orsino and Viola. And so, what few scenes we have of them in the play need to be so deeply charged that we as an audience understand what is keeping Viola so firmly in her truth about who she really loves, and what Orsino is rapidly falling for. Even if he says some trash things and claims to love another woman, of course, his love for Olivia is purely conceptual. He loves her beauty and what little he knows of her amiable qualities, but he doesn't really know Olivia as a person. And therein lies Orsino's contradiction. He's depressed and lovesick over a woman he's built up in his head who does not exist. Viola's confrontation at the start of the scene is born from the knowledge of actually knowing who Olivia is. Something interesting that's been pointed out in many places is how Viola and Olivia are mirrors to each other. Both highborn without their parents, having recently lost a brother. Even the names Olivia and Viola are almost anagrams of each other. In many ways, Viola understands instantly how much they have in common.
Oh, that I served that lady.
And possibly understands Olivia as well as she does because of how much she sees herself in the other woman. Many productions have also hinted that Viola might also feel something romantic for Olivia, but it is Orsino who she truly loves, and I just find Viola's discussion with Orsino fascinating because while I think Orsino's feelings are pretty straightforward, Viola's can be very open to interpretation. So in Act 3, things only get messier. Viola returns to Olivia at her request after some amusing banter with Fest.
Dost thou live by thy tabor?
No, sir, I live by the church.
Art thou a churchman?
No such matter, sir. I do live by the church, for I do live at my house, and my house doth stand by the church.
And some more silliness with Sir Toby and Sir Andrew.
Taste your legs, sir. Put them to motion.
My legs do better understand me, sir, than I understand what you mean by bidding me taste my legs.
But finally she speaks to Olivia again, intent only on gaining her affections for Orsino. And Olivia explains that she's been enchanted, not by Orsino, but by Viola.
I pity you. That's a degree to love? No.
Viola continues trying to convince her to love Orsino and not her, and Olivia is just as stubborn in pursuing Viola instead.
Tell me what thou thinkest of me.
That you do think you are not what you are.
If I think so, I think the same of you. Then think you right. I am not what I am.
I would you were as I would have you be.
Meanwhile, Sebastian and Antonio arrive in Illyria.
My willing love, the rather by these arguments of fear set forth in your pursuit.
My kind Antonio, I can no other answer give but thanks. And thanks.
Antonio wants to find lodging and avoid notice given he has enemies who might remember him here, including Orsino. But he wants to indulge his friend, and so he gives Sebastian his purse so the young man can explore and tells Sebastian to meet him in an hour at an inn called the Elephant. Back at Olivia's, Sir Andrew is frustrated at Olivia's lack of attention towards him after he was assured by Sir Toby of Olivia's eventual interest. Sir Toby, along with Fabian, for reasons, tells Sir Andrew to challenge Viola to a duel for Olivia's affection. And once he's run off to write the letter challenging Viola, Mariah comes to tell them that their trick on Malvolio has worked.
He's in yellow stockings.
And cross-gartered.
Most villainously!
And so Mariah comes to Olivia and tells her that Malvolio is acting very strange.
He's coming, madam. But in a very strange manner. He is sure possessed, madam.
And thus we arrive at one of the silliest and most famous scenes in the play. When the play first premiered in the early 1600s, it actually received a review of sorts, found many years later in the diary of John Manningham, a law student at the Middle Temple, which specifically called out the Malvolio plot in particular. A good practice in it to make the steward believe his lady widow was in love with him by counterfeiting a letter, as from his lady, in general terms telling him what she liked best in him and prescribing his gesture in smiling, his apparel, etc. So Malvolio comes out, posing, prancing, and showing off his yellow stockings.
How now, Malvolio? Oh.
This does make some obstruction in the blood, this cross-garter. But what of that?
And believing Olivia to be in love with him begins a series of comic misunderstandings.
Wilt thou go to bed, Malvolio?
It's an absurd sequence. At this point, it's hard not to giggle at it. Also, there's that famous line that's a dick joke.
Be not afraid of greatness. 'Twas well writ.
What meanst thou by that, Malvolio?
Some are born great.
Some achieve greatness.
What sayest thou?
Some have greatness thrust upon him!
But once Olivia runs off, things take a turn. And it really depends on the audience and production when things go too far. But Toby, Mariah, and Fabian arrive and corral Malvolio, all the while insisting he is mad or possessed.
Get her to say her prayers, good Sir Toby, get her to pray! My prayers? Minx!
Malvolio leaves them, and Sir Toby says they'll put him in a dark room and tie him up.
We may carry it thus for our pleasure and his penance.
Around here's when Sir Andrew comes back, having written out his challenge for Viola. Sir Toby says he'll deliver it, and then basically chucks out the letter and finds the page. Viola is once again being pursued by Olivia, and once she leaves the lady, Sir Toby and Fabian find her and deliver a version of Sir Andrew's challenge, one that makes Sir Andrew out to be a much more terrifying prospect than he actually is.
He's a knight and a devil in a private brawl.
Souls and bodies have he divorced 3.
Then Toby goes to Sir Andrew and does the same thing.
Why, he is a very devil. I have not seen such a virago.
Why does Sir Toby do this? God only knows, but the duel between Viola and Sir Andrew is a sequence that any decent production will mine for plenty of comedy. Until the proceedings are interrupted by Antonio, who believes Viola is Sebastian and intercedes on her behalf. Almost immediately, he's recognized and arrested by officers. Antonio asks for the purse of money he gave to Sebastian in order to try and pay his bail or something. But whatever it is, Viola, being herself and not her brother, has no money other than her own, which isn't much. Antonio, still not realizing his mistake, grows angry and chastises her, much to Viola's confusion, until, as he's being taken away, he calls her Sebastian. And Viola finally has a reason to hope her brother might be alive and in Illyria.
He named Sebastian. I my brother know, yet living in my glass. Even such and so in favour was my brother.
Oh, if it prove! Tempests are kind.
And salt waves fresh in love.
So, let's talk a little bit more about this.
And yet, by the fangs of malice, I swear I am not what I play.
So, one of the most discussed elements of Twelfth Night is its handling of gender, something that can be acted and directed in all manner of ways to reach all manner of conclusions. And I think this comes through most in Viola's cross-dressing. There is a pretty storied history of cross-dressing in Shakespeare plays. I mentioned it briefly in the Much Ado About Nothing video, but it happens in Twelfth Night, Merchant of Venice, As You Like It, The Merry Wives of Windsor, and Cymbeline. There's even a few edge cases with scenes that are referred to but not acted out on stage, like the men dressed as women to trick Anne Page's suitors in The Merry Wives of Windsor, or the play within a play sequence in Midsummer Night's Dream. But the closest to Twelfth Night, in terms of how the cross-dressing plot is utilized, is in As You Like It.
What did he when thou sawest him? What said he? How looked he? Wherein went he? What makes he here? Did he ask for me? Where remains he? How parted he with thee? And when shalt thou see him again? Answer me in one word.
In As You Like It, Rosaline is banished from court by her uncle, the Duke Frederick, and flees to the woods with her cousin Celia. There, the pair assume false identities to hide from Duke Frederick, and also to provide them some safety on their own, Rosaline decides to pretend to be a man and chooses the pseudonym Ganymede as her male persona. While hiding as Ganymede, she comes across Orlando, who she had already expressed passion for earlier in the play when she still appeared as a woman. And Orlando, not recognizing her, is still very much in love with Rosaline. The interesting contrast here is that, although As You Like It and Twelfth Night share some structural similarities, the main romance plays out while the woman acts as a man, and there's a subplot where another woman falls for the male persona our heroine is inhabiting. But the part I find curious is how Rosaline and Viola choose to act out masculinity. I would say Rosaline's version of masculinity is more than a little toxic.
Art thou God to shepherd turned, that a maiden's heart hath burned? Can a woman rail thus?
She quickly chooses to see herself as a man and above other women and their flaws.
I thank God I am not a woman, to be touched with so many giddy offences as he hath generally taxed their whole sex withal.
She belittles women, both to her cousin and to her lover.
Oh, that woman that cannot make her fault her husband's occasion.
You have simply misused our sex in your love prate.
But Viola does the opposite. When Orsino goes on about how women are inconstant and easily swayed, Viola opposes him vehemently, saying she knows too well what women to men owe. I just find it an interesting contrast, because throughout the play we see various interpretations of gender, both from Viola herself.
Jove, in his next commodity of hair, send thee a beard.
By my troth, I'll tell thee, I am almost sick for one, but I would not have it grow on my chin.
But also in how others perceive her.
Diana's lip is not more smooth and rubious.
One would think his mother's milk was scarce out of him.
As Catherine Belsey writes, Cesario is not, we are to understand, a man. He resembles a woman, but he is not quite that either. His voice is as a maiden's. He is like Diana, goddess of chastity, perpetual virgin who passed her time hunting in the forest and was the least stereotypically feminine of the female immortals. Each time, some quality evades the speaker in these definitions, and the romantic comedy depends on the elusiveness of Viola/Cesario's identity. The Arden Shakespeare states that the most slippery conceptual terrain is the definition of gender identity. They quote Northrop Frye, who describes Orsino and Olivia languishing in melancholy until out of the sea comes an ambiguous figure that can sing both high and low. Mermaids are often very beloved in the trans community, being a mythical being that is two things at once, and Viola emerges from the ocean and becomes simultaneously man and woman. The Arden again states that she represents an indeterminate middle ground, where the genders of the boy actors playing the role, the female character, and the male disguise are superimposed.
What I am and what I would are as secret as maidenhead.
To your ears, divinity. To any others, profanation.
Viola's cross-dressing, and indeed the effectiveness of it, challenges gender binaries, and many productions can highlight this further, casting non-binary or gender-fluid actors to play Viola. Several productions have highlighted this fluidity of gender by having one actor play both Viola and her brother Sebastian. In film, this is achieved with body doubles and careful editing, but the Wilma Theatre had the actor embrace themselves on stage when the two twins reunite, and had one scene where the actor's costume and makeup were split down the middle to play both Viola and Sebastian. Even at the end of the play, when things are resolved with an appearance of cisgender heterosexual couplehood, Viola has yet to return to her woman's weeds, her maiden garments she abandoned at the beginning of the play. Unless a production chooses to portray the wedding, and some do, then Viola ends the play as Cesario. The romantic confessions all happen while she's still a man. Basically, by the end of the play, Orsino accidentally bags a bigender baddie by just being a bisexual disaster and throwing himself at another woman. Incredible, 10 out of 10, I love that for him. So let's talk about Malvolio. So from here, the plot to embarrass Malvolio gets a lot less fun or funny. In fact, it gets downright uncomfortable to watch, as Malvolio is locked in a small dark room and they try to trick him into insanity while he begs to be set free. Mariah and Toby enlist Fest's help in this, first disguised as the parson's Sir Topaz and then appearing to Malvolio as himself. In both guises, Fest toys with him and then eventually agrees to get him paper and ink so he can pen a letter to Olivia outlining the wrongs done against him. And basically, my hottest take on Twelfth Night is that Malvolio is not the villain here, although I think some productions try to justify his punishment by making him one, but in actual fact, it's Sir Toby who's the villain. He engineers all of this, and the fight between Sir Andrew and Viola, seemingly for his own amusement and little else. The most Malvolio actually did was act pompous when people were partying at 3 a.m. in his home.
Do you make an ale house of my lady's house?
I would also be pretty cranky if my housemates caused a ruckus at 3 a.m. He's unpleasant and he's cruel to Fest that one time.
I marvel that your ladyship takes delight in such a barren rascal. I saw him put down the other day with an ordinary fool that has no more brains than a stone.
and is just generally very full of himself, but I don't think that is a crime deserving of the punishment he receives. The worst thing he does, like the worst thing, is that he threatens Mariah's job for her part in the late-night mischief. And if Illyria is at all like Elizabethan England, which it probably is, then that is probably threatening her source of income and possibly her home. If she lost the job, she could be unhoused and penniless, but it is just a threat. He doesn't actually do anything. Meanwhile, they lock him in a small dark room and try to convince him he's insane. A lot of productions seem to understand this discomfort and lean into it, showing him bruised and bloody in his cell or upon his eventual release. The worst are the productions that do this and then still try to mine these sequences for sanest humor.
I am as well in my wits, fool, as thou art.
But as well, sir, then you're mad indeed if you be no better in your wits than a fool.
The only thing I can suggest to productions is that they pick a lane. Either Malvolio's imprisonment is not that bad, and the fooling that Fest does with him is played for laughs.
Sister Tupa!
Bye!
Or it's horrible, and Fest is just participating in his torture, possibly because he's mad about being called a barren rascal with no more brain than a stone. But productions must try to pick a lane. You can't try to be funny and then have Malvolio bruised and bloody. You can't do both of those things. It's uncomfortable to watch because nobody deserves that kind of treatment and nothing he did warrants it, making his punishment difficult while still treated in comic terms. The way the mental illness aspect is treated is often extra uncomfortable because the jokes about his sanity, while understandable for the 1600s, can still get laughs now. I've seen several Fest actors choose to, in the scene where Fest reads Malvolio's letter, just spout weird shouty gibberish as an interpretation of this exchange.
By the Lord,
and it still gets a laugh.
How now, art thou mad?
No, madam, I do but read madness.
I appreciate any production that at least understands that while the yellow stocking sequence is very silly and worth amusement, this part isn't. Although the choice by a few productions to go so far as having Fest be the villain by the end is also a bit wild to me.
Thus, the whirligig of time brings in his revenges.
Sir Toby engineered all of this, with some help from Mariah, and later he will be horribly cruel to Sir Andrew when Sir Andrew may be of no more use to him. I just have complicated feelings about Malvolio's treatment because I do see some queerness in him. Not the straightforward kind, it's definitely an interpretation, but there is something honest in his proclamation, "I will be strange." In those days, the word queer meant strange. And he does so through smiling, through gaiety. It is a modern interpretation, but it's one I can't quite shake. Even the yellow stocking scene has been interpreted by some as a form of social transgression, a form of cross-dressing, appearing outside of his usual dress and attitude. Frankly, when you look at Shakespeare through a modern lens, there's a lot of queerness to be found throughout most, if not all, of his plays. There's the intense homoeroticism of Coriolanus.
Let me twain mine arms about that body.
And I have nightly since dreamt of encounters twixt thyself and me. We have been down together in my sleep, unbuckling helms, fisting each other's throats, and waked half dead with nothing.
There's the anarchic queerness of Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream.
Now I frolic. Not a mouse shall disturb this hallowed house.
And there's an awful lot of cross-dressing. There's a lot that can be dug out of Shakespeare's plays and out of Twelfth Night as well. As for Malvolio, listen, I wouldn't want to be in a room with this guy, but I see something in him that I understand, and so many audiences have. From that very first review by John Manningham, which spoke mostly of Malvolio, he's a part an actor loves to play, and many reviews discuss him at length, and, well, this has nothing to do with any of that, but I do need you to know that in that 1994 RSC production, a Welsh actor named Desmond Barrett played the role, and a reviewer named Benedict Nightingale described his performance thusly: "A lugubrious man-mountain, massively pirouetting in yellow." I just think that is the funniest description ever, and we should all wish to be a lugubrious man-mountain. So let's talk about how the show ends. Most of the rest of Act 4 is devoted to Sebastian making his way on Illyria, absolutely baffled by everything. Everybody thinks he's Cesario, aka Viola, so Sir Andrew tries to start another fight with him. Sebastian responds after being slapped by kicking Sir Andrew's ass quite soundly, and so Sir Toby starts a fight with him too, and Sebastian has no idea why these strangers are attacking him, and he's even more baffled when Olivia comes out and chastises the men and begs Sebastian's forgiveness.
Will it be ever thus, ungracious wretch, out of my sight? Be not offended, dear Cesario. Roots may be gone!
And then she entreats him again.
Nay, prithee, come. Once thou be ruled by me.
And Sebastian is truly, no thoughts head empty, delighted at this beautiful woman wanting him, so he just kind of rolls with it.
Madam, I will.
After a scene where they, at the very least, have made out extensively or possibly slept together, Olivia asks him to marry her, and I cannot stress how head empty this boy is when he's just like, cool. But in Act 5, everything starts to truly implode as all the plots come crashing together. Viola and Orsino go to meet Antonio, who Viola only knows as the man that rescued her from a fight and then spoke strangely of things she didn't know about.
He did me kindness, sir. Drew on my side.
But in conclusion put strange speech on me.
Antonio tells them both how he came to Illyria with this boy today and has been in his company for the past 3 months. Orsino had Viola in his service for nearly that long, so he knows the stories don't match.
3 months this youth has tended upon me.
But then Olivia shows up and tries to speak to Viola.
Cesario, you do not keep promise with me.
Madam. My lord would speak, my duty hushes me.
And Olivia roundly rejects Orsino again to his face, and he does not take it well.
Still so cruel.
Still so constant, Lord.
Then shit gets wild.
Why should I not, in savage jealousy, like to the Egyptian thief on point of death, kill what I love?
Orsino basically threatens to kill Viola despite Olivia, and Viola's like, if that's what you want.
And I, most jocund, apt, and willingly, to do you rest 1,000 deaths would die.
What?
They turn to go and do God knows what based on that extremely extra exchange, and then Olivia tries to call them back.
Cesario! Husband, stay!
This bit is always a little funny, but also, Orsino, already in a jealous rage, takes that pretty badly, while Viola is baffled and denies it. Olivia summons the priest who married her and Sebastian, and since nobody can tell the difference between them, he confirms Olivia and Viola were married, much to Viola's dismay and Orsino's anger.
Oh, thou dissembling cub.
Farewell and take her, but direct thy feet, where thou and I henceforth may never meet.
Before this can go any further, they're interrupted when Sir Andrew appears requesting a surgeon for Sir Toby. He shows up proclaiming that they were horribly beaten by Cesario, who once again did no such thing. Also, this is the bit where as Sir Toby is being taken to the doctor, he's really mean to Sir Andrew.
Will you help? An asshead? And a coxcomb?
And a knave? A thin-faced knave? A gull?
After some more back and forth between all of them, Sebastian appears to apologize to Olivia for missing their appointment and harming her kin.
Pardon me, sweet one. Even for the vows we made each other, but so late ago.
And finally, the penny hath dropped.
One voice, one face, one habit, and 2 persons.
Sebastian, not understanding the confusion, spots Antonio and greets him warmly.
Antonio! Oh, my dear Antonio, how have the hours racked and tortured me since I've lost thee?
Sebastian, are you? Fearest thou that, Antonio? How have you made division of yourself?
Also, I appreciate any Olivia that can deliver this line with the appropriate amount of horny upon seeing 2 Cesarios.
Most wonderful!
But finally, the 2 twins see each other.
Do I stand there?
I never had a brother.
I had a sister. whom the blind waves and surges have devoured.
It's just a great and gratifying moment as they go back and forth.
Of Charity, what kin are you to me?
What countryman? What name? What parentage?
Messalene. Sebastian was my father.
Such a Sebastian was my brother too.
Viola asks if he's a ghost, and he tells her no.
Are you a woman? As the rest goes even.
I should my tears let fall upon your cheek and say,
Thrice welcome, drowned Viola.
Although in dialogue, Viola proclaims they shouldn't embrace until she removes her masculine usurped attire and returns to her women's weeds, but all the best productions ignore that and give us a glorious reuniting. She tells her brother that she's been in service to Orsino, and Sebastian addresses Olivia.
So comes it, lady, you have been mistook.
You would have been contracted to a maid.
Nor are you therein by my life deceived.
You are betrothed both to a maid and man.
And Orsino is finally piecing some things together too.
Well, if this be so, as yet the glass seems true.
I shall have share in this most happy rack.
Boy, thou hast said to me 1,000 times thou never shouldst love woman like to me.
And Viola confirms it.
And all those sayings will I overswear, and all those swearings keep as true in soul as doth that orbed continent.
The fire that severs day from night.
Basically claiming her love is as true and sure as the sun, and so Orsino says he'll see her in her woman's weeds, but they were left with the captain who she arrived with. And he's been apparently imprisoned on a suit from Malvolio in some entirely offstage occurrence that we have no details about. And now, Fest delivers the letter Malvolio wrote to Olivia. She asks Fest to read it, and when he responds in a jest, Fabian reads the letter, which describes Malvolio's understanding of events. Fabian is sent to bring Malvolio, and while they wait, Olivia asks Orsino to see her as a sister now, and he agrees before addressing Viola.
And since you called me master for so long,
Here is my hand. You shall from this time be your master's mistress.
It's very cute. And now Malvolio is brought out and addresses them all angrily about his treatment. He has the fake love letter written by Mariah to look like it was from Olivia. And then Fabian admits to the ruse and his part in it as it was engineered by Sir Toby. Malvolio says he'll be revenged on the whole pack of them, and everybody agrees he's been very mistreated. Orsino asks that somebody pursue Malvolio and make him see a peaceful resolution. I actually really like that in the 2017 Glow production, after Malvolio addresses them all, Fest holds his hand. That's really sweet. In the Trevor Nunn film, he says that line about having his revenges almost regretfully.
Thus the whirligig of time brings in his revenges.
Many productions in their final moments choose to highlight Malvolio, possibly as a statement of resilience, or I guess to set up the inevitable and well-deserved sequel, 13th Night, Malvolio's Revenge. Fun fact, I wrote that joke and then discovered a YA spy novel called 13th Night about Malvolio's revenge. Although it's against Orsino for some reason instead of Sir Toby, and Fest is like a spy or something who's going to solve the crime, it sounds wild. But with that plotline as resolved as it's going to get, Orsino addresses Viola as Cesario.
Cesario, come. For so you shall be, while you are a man, but when in other habits you are seen.
Orsino's mistress. And his fancy's queen.
Then the show ends with a song that can be about a lot of things. About the wind and the rain and the joys and misfortunes that come and go while the rain, it raineth every day. The final lines go as follows. A great while ago the world begun, with hey-ho, the wind and the rain. But that's all one, our play is done, and we'll strive to please you every day. And that's the show. A cyclical farce about the tragedies and joys that come and go, and messy people making mistakes while the world spins on, and the rain, it raineth every day. A lot of people make mistakes in this play, in their words or in their actions. Viola, just by being herself and trying to survive while mourning her brother, accidentally causes such chaos. There's this poem by Natalie I think of when I think of Viola. I kneel into a dream where I am good and loved. I am good, I am loved. My hands have made some good mistakes. They can always make better ones. But the heart of this play for me, the beating heart of it, is the relationship between this brother and sister, between Viola and Sebastian. It's made clear that I think Viola and Sebastian only really have each other. Their parents are dead, and we don't know where they were intending to go on the ship that wrecked, but I can't imagine it's been easy for them. And I don't know, there's something about having a sibling that's been through hell with you. One who had to look the same struggles in the eye and say, "This will not break me." One who knows something about the weight that only you carry because she's got one that's almost like it. That's something I know a bit about. And imagine having that person and then losing them. Imagine how heartbreaking that would be. A Tumblr user by the name of Vampowers of all things summed it up best. Sibling relationships are so strange. Like, I love you. You will never understand me in a way that matters. We are the same person in drastically different ways. We are sewn together. We don't talk. We are attached to the hip. You wish I was never born. Can I call you? Let's eat together. I forgive you. I love the meals you cook. We live in different universes. You can stay at my house if you need. We've never been friends. You are more important to me than anyone on this earth. I think any production that nails the heartbreak of Viola and Sebastian's separation and the joy at their reuniting gets my seal of approval, because they are the heart of this story. I just love this play that's about mistakes and trying to make better ones, and two siblings who love each other to death and beyond. But that's all one, our play is done, and the rain, it raineth every day. So, if you want more queer Shakespeare content in your life, then you must go watch Abigail Thorne's play The Prince, which is exclusively on Nebula. Nebula is a creator-owned streaming service where creators are free to explore the ideas that don't work on an ad-supported platform like YouTube, and it's where hundreds of creators are making exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. For example, I've been making companion videos about painting the thumbnails for my essays, which you can check out, or Maggie Mayfish's series Unrated on the history of sexuality in film. Nebula's also producing films like Abigail Thorne's short film Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend or Jessie Gender's Identities. You can find exclusive ad-free content and early releases from creators like Princess Weeks, Jacob Geller, Jessie Gender, FD Signifier, and so many more. And if you use my link in the description, you'll get a 40% discount on annual plans, which comes down to $30 for the year or $250 a month. A percentage of your subscription fees every month go directly to me, so you'd be helping me continue to make videos. So go check out go.nebula.tv/LadyKnightTheBrave. That's go.nebula.tv/LadyKnightTheBrave. And thanks! Hello, and thank you for sticking all the way to the credits. For your time and trouble, here's a treat. My next video is going to be about black sails, so strap in for that. But for now, thank you for watching and supporting the channel, it really helps a lot. Special thanks to my patrons, y'all help pay my rent. But for right now, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.